Got it. Presentation, view, present. Well, I am going to try to be a stickler on time here and keep to our schedule today. I want to begin just to let you know, thank you for being here. I'm sorry we can't be in person. We are doing this Zoom, and it was scheduled for 9 to 12. I have Zoom fatigue. I'm probably the worst at Zoom fatigue. We will not go till 12. And just as soon as I say that, you all are going to drag it to 12. But probably, probably we're going to be through by about 11:30, somewhere between 11:30 and 12. That last section, I don't have a lot. It's kind of really your time. I've got a smaller presentation on that last section, and we'll give you the same amount of discussion time and we'll end. If that's okay. First, I want to say thank you for being here. This workshop is put on by the Front Porch. You're going to learn more about the Front Porch. It is our spirituality center at St. John's. If you are not in Tallahassee and you're connecting with us online or some other way, we welcome you. This is the Front Porch is again a kind of our spirituality center, a way in which we offer contemplative programs and different speakers. I'm going to talk about this. We're just launching this. Our main kickoff is coming up next month with Brian McLaren, who's going to be our guest speaker on campus. We'll also have a virtual option of that. This is a programmatic offering, the Front Porch, to connect people at all walks of life, to help deepen your spiritual life. And we're going to do different classes, different programs rooted in Christian spirituality. And if you're new to the faith, we welcome you here. If you're just exploring, we welcome you here. This is part of this. You'll see I'm not in a collar today. I'm kind of low key. And we're using a book. And I got a lot of questions on this, why Ian Cron's book. And again, some of this was, he's an Episcopal priest. So I wanted to use his book as an Episcopalian, but also he's intended this to be a primer, really an introduction into the Enneagram. So in the report, maybe a little more expensive, but also think if you're doing a workshop like this, you should have some investment in it. But the report's probably written a little different than other reports. And so if you're not new to Christianity, if you are new to Christianity, or you're not a Christian, this is an easier report to read. So I wanted that to be a part of what this is. And for those of you who've gone deep, you'll hear a lot of the other works that you know really well with the Enneagram. So this is a part of the Front Porch, kind of our kickoff class here, and we're thrilled you are part of it. And hope that you schedule October the 16th, 10 to 12:30, Brian McLaren at St. John's. Be a part of that. Today's agenda. I will do a quick overview of the Enneagram from 9 to 9:30. I'll probably go a little long right there, and that's okay. And then we'll go into breakout rooms. We're going to change these up all the time. I know some people don't like to talk, and that is fine. But these are not going to be deep sort of questions. You're not going to have to bare your soul. It's mainly just a time for you to kind of get in here with some friends and kind of see what it says, react to it, not react to it, and take what I'm doing in the presentation and go a little deeper with it. Again, some people are going to like to talk. I'm going to mention a retreat I did on this, and I don't really like the small group thing. I'll be honest with you. I'm putting my cards on the table, but they kept telling me in that retreat, this is how you go deeper. The more you talk about it, the more you hear people interact with it, the deeper you're going to go. So just trust in that process. Know that I'm not asking you to bare your soul. But if that's uncomfortable with just random strangers, I understand that's not something a lot of people want to do. It's just an opportunity to kind of engage with the material I've presented and ask some questions with some folks in this group who might know more about the Enneagram than you. And that'll change. So we'll be in different groups as the day goes on. I will do a little introduction from 10 to, so then we'll come back at 9:50 ideally. I'll just say, hey, we're going to take a break. We'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10. Enneagram and relationships, I'll do a little presentation on that. We'll go back to groups for a minute to process that. We'll have another break. And then, yeah, I don't think that's going to go from 11 to 11:30. It's probably going to be 11 to 11:15, and then 11:15 to probably 11:25, 35, and it will probably be out shortly thereafter. So just wanted to let you know that. Pushing on, yeah, this is the resource I suggested we use. Ian Cron, he's out there. He's got this book. He's an Episcopal priest who lives in Nashville. He's got this introductory assessment. Again, this is a primer. And I think he did a really good job of just introducing the Enneagram. He's obviously taken this to corporate suites, C-suites. He's taken it all over the place. He said CIA and named the places. He's been doing this even with the Vatican priests. So he can go deep, but he can be, I think his work is an easy way to just get into this. For those that want to go a lot deeper, and the place where Ian Cron got exposed to this was Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr, many of us know, Center of Action and Contemplation. This is the book. This is a great book. I love this book, and this is the one I go to quite a bit. It's not an introduction. It kind of is an introduction, but if you're new to the faith if you're new to Christianity, it could be a little intimidating. So I wanted to start here and push you towards something like this. That was the goal of the workshop today. Yeah, okay, there's me. And how did I get to this? I love seeing Susan Gage here this morning because she represents what I did not do. I went through seminary, and then about 10 years later, 10 years after I was ordained, I guess I knew about the Enneagram, but 10 years later, I found myself leaving the Cathedral of St. Philip in Atlanta. Margaret Ann got a promotion, brought us back to Thomasville. I didn't know what to do. There weren't a lot of positions open around here, so I taught school. Some of you all know this at St. John's. I was an English teacher and a history teacher. Year one passed. Did I have any education? In education? No. I was flying by the seat of my pants. Year one, I made it through year one. Year two, I am in my 12th grade English class teaching a book on basically teaching A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest Gaines, which is a great book, and had some senior women who were in a psychology class, and they were learning about the Enneagram, and they said, Coach Marsh, I was coach back then. They said, Coach Marsh, this was last year, by the way. They said, or 2 years ago, they said, Coach Marsh, do you know something about the Enneagram? I'm like, yeah, I know something about the Enneagram. And somebody might need to mute. And so I said, I know something about the Enneagram, and they said, well, we're using this in class, and they're like, well, what do you think the character, Grant Wiggins, it was the character I think in the novel. They're like, what do you think he is? I'm like, well, let's wait a couple of days. Let's get to halfway through the book, and I will give you a fun Friday at Fun Fridays, and we'll let you sit there and take the basic free assessment as the main character. Y'all can break up into groups. Maybe you know half the novel. You can anticipate the questions like we were talking about, and how Grant might answer these questions, and see if we get consistency in his Enneagram type, and then maybe we can do some character analysis. Sure enough, they all, different parts of the room, took the assessment as Grant Wiggins. They got the same type, and it opened up the novel for them. And it opened up the Enneagram for me 10 years later, about that 12 years later, as an Episcopal priest. I was like, whoa, they just cracked this book open. Obviously, I had read it and studied it and knew what I was going to teach. I was like, they just went to new places in here. And it took me back to the Enneagram in a very circuitous route as a priest. So there you have it. And then I kind of fell back in love with it and really started devoting some energy to it. So there are a lot of people on this call that know a tremendous amount more than the Enneagram. You've worked with it longer than I have, and you're going to be in the groups with some of them and let them share, let them say stuff that I don't even know. But I'm coming to this really kind of still fresh, and I found it to be a wonderful tool, and I want to walk you through some of the things I've learned today. So just to go ahead and say it, this is a tool, this is not gospel. So let's kind of take a little breath. If you think the assessment got you wrong, that's fine. The assessment is an assessment. And as we've heard from some people that were on the call earlier, the best way to do it is to read as we go through these types to kind of see, hey, which one speaks to me? Ooh, which one stings me? And maybe you are off by one and you really align with another one. So the assessment is going to have flaws, as any assessments do. So this is the best way to kind of do this. The assessment helps kind of get you there maybe faster for a majority of the people. But if you don't feel like it got you, listen today, and maybe you feel like you align a little more with another type. Also, you'll see arrows and wings, and we'll talk about those today. And so what I want you to do is, this is a tool that helps us understand about the good and evil and how we hide from ourselves. As you heard Ian Cron in his book say, this is the lens by which we put on in childhood, how we kind of function, and it kind of reveals a lot about ourselves, our motives. What speaks to me about this spiritually is it helps me identify this true self and false self. And this is one of the things, one of the reasons I'm using this as a here with the front porch contemplative, looking at contemplative practices. For me, I found this very, very insightful to know when I'm acting in ways that glorifying the false self, and being able to identify that. And I'll speak more about this in that third hour. This is a great quote. So a lot of this is self-awareness, self-knowledge. And this is a great quote from Rowan Williams. Again, I'm pushing this almost now right into that third hour. To sustain yourself spiritually requires disciplines of self-awareness. You all might want to take some notes and write these sort of things down. Disciplines of self-awareness. So what kind of spiritual disciplines do we have of self-awareness? Now, that doesn't mean you can't be a disciple without continuous intense self-analysis, but routinely, he says, am I capable of looking at how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling with a bit of distance and coolness? Then he goes on to say, am I capable of taking my intense feelings, my positive and negative, out of the depth of my gut for a moment and putting them where I can look at them and where Christ can look at them? And so this is going to be the structure of the retreat today, or the workshop. We're going to go through the Enneagram. We're going to look at the good, the positive, and the negative. We're going to look at those about ourselves. We're going to put them out for a moment so where we can see them. Maybe we can process some of these things with our friends, and then how we put those in front of God, and how we grow. That is the point of today. My hope is that you see this as a tool, not as gospel. Don't get so caught up in the details. Realize there's a ton of fluidity in this. We all have wings and we have arrows, and I'm going to talk about that. So if you don't just see yourself as a 4, I'm a 4. Don't just get so confined in that you focus on the trees and you lose kind of some of the forest. My hope is you bring the past, the present, and the future into this workshop. As a 4, I live in the past. So that's been one of the ways in which I kind of identify as a 4. I can go back in my life and see, ooh, that was a bad train wreck. And that's what a 4 does. And so do that. You don't have to share all that, but bring that with you today. Bring your family, your work, and other relationships into this workshop. I mean, again, we don't have to air their laundry, but just have that in your heart and in your mind as you're going through this. And the most important thing today is, and the reason I chose this assessment is it gives you a lot of information, but I want you to move. And I think what he wants you to do, Ian Cron, is this is a waste of a morning if all you're doing is kind of going through this just to learn a little more about yourself and you don't do anything about it. So move from self-knowledge and maybe awareness to growth, to self-growth. Yes, knowledge and awareness is very much important, but we need to move to that kind of now what? And that'll be that third hour today. So that's a lot of intro, and now we're going to get started. There we go. Okay, here we are. Just basic introduction stuff here. So I want you to have your report out, maybe be taking some notes. I'm going to fly pretty fast through this and try to get us in our groups pretty soon. This will probably be the longer section. So we're going to start. Here's the Enneagram, 9 points. Ennea means 9. Yeah, did I leave out some of the? Oh yeah, sorry. What is the Enneagram? So there I did. My internet's acting up. What is the Enneagram? The Enneagram is an ancient personality type system with an uncanny accuracy in describing how human beings are wired, both positive and negatively. The history, so some of this dates all the way back, and I'm going to go through this quickly, into the Desert Fathers and Mothers in the 300s in Christianity. It's they would come out, St. Anthony, some of those folks, people would come out, they would tell you their problems, and they kind of had this model, this typology in their mind, and as you talked, they kind of probably typed, put you in a type, and were able to kind of get questions from you, or basically in your conversations, expose some of those things that we'll learn about our typology. And so this is really used today in spiritual direction. A lot of spiritual directors use this as a helpful way, again, for spiritual growth, spiritual awareness, self-awareness, and growth. And we'll go through the different types. I'm going to try to make up time here. So there it is, 9 points. And you'll look and you'll see that there are triads. So 3 numbers, obviously triads. The first is the 8, 9, and 1. So if you're in that triad, this is kind of called the gut triad. They have this gift, and you'll see in this chart a gift of relating, but beneath that is some anger, right? The next triad would be the heart triad, 2s, 3s, and 4s. They're often, I'm a 4, so you can see right there, coming to the room, I can feel the feelings. That's a gift, right? That's a gift. But beneath that gift is a little is some shame. That's kind of probably a weakness and something you're going to see in those numbers, kind of the sin. 5s, 6s, and 7s. They are the thinkers. So you've got the gut, you've got the heart, and the last triad is the head are the thinkers. They're good at doing, but there's often fear driving them. And we'll explore more of these as we go through this. You'll see arrows and you'll see wings, and we'll talk about the relationship between those as we move on. But I want to start and just kind of get it on out here. So type 8, we're going to start up in that first kind of triad here, the gut. Type 8, here we are. The challenger. They are a dominating person. Here we are. The need to be against. They are strong and mighty with a sense of justice. They are open, direct with their word, and they can be trusted. They take the side of the weak. There you are. The need to be against. Sometimes in some models, they're called the protector, the leader, the boss. They're kind of macho. If you're a type 8 in there, they can run you over. They are hardcore. They're just very strong folks. Their dilemma, their defense mechanism is denial. And if it doesn't fit their understanding of truth and justice, particularly if it doesn't fit their understanding of truth and justice, and their root sin is shamelessness. They need control over their own possessions and other people. They can run over you. So they're strong folks. And as you go to the 8, again, often called the challenger, they need to be against. So these names can change from different models. Just be okay with that. But also, I think that change is helpful because it opens up different ways of understanding. They're powerful, dominating. They can be self-confident, decisive, willful. Look at this bottom section. This is taken from the Enneagram Institute. When moving in the direction of disintegration, or another name for that is stress, right? The self-confident 8s take on the worst parts, the secretive and fearfulness of 5s. However, moving in a direction of growth, they take on of integration, lustful, controlling 8s become more optimistic and caring like 2s. So that sense of strength and machoism can actually be they do it for love. So they're doing it for good reasons. So they can be a 2. So if you're an 8 today, circle 5, circle 2. 5, we're going to look at the negative sides of 5, but we're going to look at the positive sides of 2. And also, we'll talk more about remembering your wings. So that's an 8. 9s. So we're moving next to the 9s, sitting at the top of the Enneagram, right? They're the peacemakers. They're the darlings. They're wonderful folks. I've got an 8 in the family. I'm not going to say who that is, but he's certainly an 8. And I've got a 9 in the family. And they're wonderful. They're amazing. They're great folks. They're unbiased arbitrators. They can see the truth of every side, again, because they sit at the top. They're really, really gifted. They're original, they're unspoiled, but their dilemma is they can avoid conflict. They just go with the flow. They can be withdrawn, and they can appear to be lethargic and just focused on comfort. Here again is this from the Enneagram Institute. A 9's area of growth. When moving in let's go stress first. When they're moving in the area of disintegration stress, they become anxious, and they take on the worst and that fear of 6s. And when they're moving in integration growth, they become, instead of being slothful, they take on the best parts of a 3. So if you're a 9, let's look at a 6. Be ready for a 6. Be ready for learning more about the 3. So circle those. Now moving to a 1. Perfectionist, reformer, judge, critic. This is the last of the gut triad. So I'm looking at this triad here. Here we are, the perfectionist, the reformer. They are idealistic, motivated, driven, longing for a true and just moral world. They have these internal, Ian Cron says, they have that internal voice that's always at work. And they think that you and I have that internal voice that's always kind of self-regulating. Now, they're model children. They are succeeders. They are their own persecutor. That's that internal voice. They're their own prosecutor. They're their own defender. They're their own judge. So if you're a 1, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, yeah. And their dilemmas, they're always in search of rules, and they're kind of self-righteous. We're going to talk about the negative sides of these in relationship. They deny or punish themselves, even kill off their needs or feelings. They're angry because the world is imperfect, and it's a struggle to accept the imperfect world. So there's a lot with a 1, and so notice that a 1 happened to be married to a 1. As we move over, in moments of stress, they take on the worst of a 4, right? They become moody and irrational. However, when moving in an area of growth, angry, cynical 1s can become more spontaneous and joyful, like a 7. So if you're a 1, let's look at a 4 and a 7 today. So be looking for how these arrows function. Whoops, going back. Okay, now we move into the other triad, the heart. So we're going to look at 2s, 3s, and 4s. The helper, the 2, the helper, the need to be needed. They need others for their health, their nourishment, their education, their welfare. They want to be liked, and they have the need for validation. They stand by others in their suffering. This is who you want at your bedside. I mean, this is probably the nurse. You all know who the 2s are. And if you're in trouble, you call a 2. I call a 2. I know who my 2s are. One of my good friends, she's a 2. And if anything's wrong with anybody in my family, she's the first to call. She will pray for you. She'll probably deliver something to your house. She's amazing. There are guys that are 2s as well. So the dilemma of the 2s is they're so into helping somebody else that they often avoid themselves. They can have a hard time finding their own centers because they're so into the other person. We used to have a little saying at the cathedral in Atlanta that the sunny side of control is helpfulness. So those 2s that always raise their hand in church, let me do it. I'll control. I'll do this. They're another way of saying that they want to control how that event goes. That's bad. Sorry, confessions of a priest. When moving in their direction of disintegration, that's when they're becoming stressed. 2s become aggressive and dominating 8s. So again, that's that kind of joke we had at church. Let me help, really let me control. However, when moving the direction of integration, they can help others, but they also are attuned to themselves. So you'll see 4s. 4s are definitely aware of their own emotions. 3 is the achiever, the performer, status seeker. 3s radiate ease and assurance. They inspire confidence. They're the role model, the performer, the achiever. They get jobs done. They aim for personal goals and they motivate others. They draw energy from success. They're the successful person. The failures, the struggles of a 3 is they avoid. There's some avoidance and the desire to please and desire to go up the mountain. You're not really sure kind of who they are, nor are they really sure of who they are. So there's some deceit going on. There's some untruth in who they really are, because it's about getting to the top. They suddenly become disengaged, apathetic. When they're in stress, they move to that 9. And when moving in direction of growth, vain, deceitful 3s become more cooperative and committed to others. So they move to the 6. They become that team player. So if you have a 3 that's really in a healthy spot, wow, that can be really, really, really powerful. And you can go online and find all who kind of fit these categories. And so there's tons of folks. I've left that out of today's presentation. Famous people. And I think Ian Cron does that in his book as well. Let's move to 4s. Confession of a Priest again. I'm a 4. We're the individualist. We love, they want to awaken the sense of beauty and harmony in their surroundings. These are the artists, the musicians. They draw energy from others. Yeah, their dilemmas is they face the temptation to strive for authenticity. I didn't like this, so I'm here with a number of people today. I always thought I was a 3, and I've still got some 3 tendencies, but I'll share more, but later. But a 4 is kind of where I was, and strive for authenticity. Our defense mechanism is artistic sublation. So we get lost in our feelings and our emotions and fantasies, and I'll say more about that. We're moving in the direction of stress. 4s can become over-involved, clingy 2s. So you take the worst part of a 4, of a 2. So in our areas of growth, we can become those 1s. We become objective and principled. We get out of our emotions, and we can get things done. 5, the thinker. So now we're moving into a different triad. I should have gone back. Come on. There we are. 5. Now we've moved into the head triad. So here they are. They are thinkers, the observer. They discover new ideas. They're researchers. They're inventors. They're objective. They're questioning. They're probably the best student, maybe even the absent-minded professor. They've got strong contemplative gifts and can help others in their search for wisdom. They love to explore. Their dilemma is that 5s, they want knowledge. You can't ever have enough. You could go back and research it for days and days and days. Maybe Thomas Aquinas was that 5, right? And go all the way in there. And also he was contemplative. The defense mechanism is they withdraw in the process of being a 5. You're so into something, you're unaware of what's around you. And we'll talk about these in relationship dynamics. So look at when moving in a direction of disintegration, that is stress. Detached 5s suddenly become hyperactive and scatter 7s. Ooh. However, when moving in the direction of integration, that is growth, averse detached 5s become more self-confident and decisive, like healthy 8s. So that's a great gift. So to 6 is the rumors are there are a lot of 6s. 6s are out there. American, it's kind of the American number. The loyal skeptic, the trooper, they're the team player, they're cooperative, they're reliable. You want a 6 around. They have a sense of what is possible and what isn't possible. Dilemma, they can be full of self-doubt. They're fearful, they mistrust, and there's always, Ian Cron says they have pre-traumatic stress syndrome, not post-traumatic stress syndrome. They're worried before it even happens, right? And that's the 6. And I think he also said I've listened to a couple of his podcasts that startup companies, there's startup companies, who knows where they are. There may be 3s and 4s in these startups, or 7s, right? And maybe probably less than 7s. I think he was working with a company with probably a number of 3s and 4s, and they were going to put all their money in something new. And he was saying, as he was doing this corporate retreat, you need a 6. You need somebody to kind of talk you off the edge here. You need a 6 to help you see kind of what's ahead. And they were going to fire the CFO because he was too resistant. And they're like, no, he's like, do not fire the 6. You need that person. And so we'll talk about that in the 3rd hour, how kind of teams and particularly churches, vestries and leadership models, you can use a lot of these. So 6s, lost my story here. 6s become competitive when they're stressed. They can become competitive, as arrogant as 3s. However, when moving in growth, they can be fearful. The fearful, pessimistic 6s become more relaxed and optimistic and healthy 9s. So wow, when a 6 is really healthy, it can be pretty amazing. The team player that has a lot of gifts. And then finally, we'll conclude with 7. 7, the Epicurean, the enthusiast, the generalist, they are full of life and full of energy. 7s are people who radiate joy and optimism. They are called the Peter Pan sometimes. They are alive at every moment, full of idealism and plans for the future. They are cheerful. They are infectious with a smile. They come to staff meetings with cake for everybody. I'm saying Mother Abby's maybe a 7. They are wonderful. They are truly wonderful people, as we all know. she is. The challenge of a 7 is temptation of 7s is idealism. I mean, they've got phenomenal ideas. They can connect dots in ways that nobody else can, but they also can avoid pain. That can be one of the challenges for 7, because life is infectious, it's joyous. It's hard for them to be in dark spots. They want to be cheerful. They want to enjoy life, and being in those difficult moments is a challenge for a 7. And so we know those gifts and challenges for everybody. So 7s, here we are. When moving in the direction of disintegration, stress, scattered 7s become perfectionist, and critical as a 1. So when they can take on the worst of a 1, and you've seen some of that today. So and when they're moving in growth, gluttonous scattered 7s can become more focused and fascinated by life, like healthy 5s. So there's a way in which they can grow and take on all those ideas. They can connect those and really think them through. So those are the quick overview of the 9 parts of the Enneagram, the 9 types. It is about 9:40 or 9:38. And what I want you to do now is to kind of go into, you've heard them, you've heard some things about them. Maybe you don't like your number. And Claire is going to put us in groups. And I want to present. I want to say a couple of things. Thank you for starting the recording again. The last section, and again, I'll do this more in the 3rd section as well, but so every number, so I'm a 4, has got 2 wings to my side. I've got a 3 and a 5. And the way Ian Cron writes in his book, again, this will be the 3rd hour. You can pick up traits from either of those. He doesn't. Some reports give you, say, hey, which way you lean. This report actually will pull, as you see in your report here, will show you both wings and kind of some characteristics of both that you might draw upon. So, and he will say that we swing into those wings. As a 4, I would go into a 3, and I would definitely go into a 5 at times. And I have seen that in moments in my life. And kind of as we get to this growth section, he'll even say that it's helpful to get into the 3 and into the 5 for a 4. And so to kind of know what's going on next to you and how you can kind of move into those sections. Others might not say that. So there's a lot that's been written on this, but I find this to be very helpful. I'm a better 4 when I can pull from a 5 and a 3. That's just some conversation we've had. And again, we'll see some more. I'll talk a little more about those arrows from the 1 and for me, from a 1 and a 2 would be for a 4. So I want to spend this section talking about, and the other thing I want to say about groups, you probably ran out of time. Yeah, I'm going to give you some questions, but if you need to go back or something in the next section opens up something from the past, that time is your time. And what they told me on my Enneagram workshop, and I'm going to show you what I did a few months ago, use those group sections to kind of bounce ideas off of each other. This is what it's about. And that's really how you go deeper. That Latin, I used to have a spiritual director that said, hey, the Latin word for conversation and conversion is the same word. And so the more you talk it, sometimes the more it sticks. And those aha moments really, really happen. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'll shut up and let you talk. But let's look at Enneagram and relationships. There's a number of things you can do here. So I want to direct you to this. This is a website. Give you some more tools as we're moving along. And the Enneagram Institute, if you haven't gone here, you can go and you can find so much. This is free stuff about your numbers. Rizzo Hudson, there's a lot of stuff available on this website. You can also find out you and maybe a spouse or a partner or significant other, see if your compatibility on that one. So it's scary. You can kind of Google some stuff and like, yeah, we were married before we knew our Enneagram types, right? So we kind of committed to it. And so picking out what those best and healthy ways are in relationships can be very important. You're not going to date and try to do Enneagram types. Maybe there's a new app out there for that. Who knows? But you can also use this report. He's got a He's got couples reports. I've not taken that. So, but if you peruse this website, I imagine it's the same thing we did, $60. It's about 120, I think. But I guess couples take it together, and there's a component of how you might want to use that. So whatever you want to do, I'm going to give you resources. I did this. This was a phenomenal retreat because this was 3 days, and this is what I did. It's Riso and Don Riso and Russ Hudson wrote one of the great books on the Enneagram, did a lot of the work with the Enneagram, the wisdom of the Enneagram. You can see that in one of the resources in the end of this. So much out there. This was a great workshop. And really what I'm doing today is an introduction for you to be able to take a workshop like this. This is if you're into this and you want to know more, this is where you need to go. And you'll see down here in the bottom paragraph, it says, we recommend familiarizing yourself with the wisdom of the Enneagram by Riso and Hudson before the class. So I'll go up another sentence. So while it is intended for those at all levels of the Enneagram experience, beginners may feel a bit overwhelmed. So I took that as a beginner and I was very overwhelmed. So I wanted to give you a little exposure to it so you could go in there and get more out of it. I also had the COVID shot that day. This is the same time but I took it in 2021. So I had a little fever throughout the whole time. It was phenomenal. And Connie, and I emailed Connie and Lisa and told them I was going to promote their stuff. They were great teachers. If you do continuing education, I just recommend this. A lot of therapists in there. And some very personal stuff. I mean, that you work with the Enneagram. So it's not like this workshop. It's a little more intense. So you've got to really want this for 3 days. But I highly, highly recommend it. So, for this section of the workshop today, it might be fun to have just another person in mind. Don't get so overwhelmed. So we're going to look at the Enneagram, kind of what your type says, kind of the strengths and the weaknesses in relationships for your type, but you also might want to have another individual in mind and kind of be thinking about them. So, in the case of if you're married, you might want to have a spouse. And maybe you know their type, maybe you don't know their type. So as I go through the types, be thinking about their type. You're not supposed to typecast, but I often do typecast. So we can talk about that in the third hour. I think that becomes typecast in a very healthy way, in a way that would show you. So if I didn't know my spouse's number, I think I could probably figure it out. But I don't do that in a demoralizing way, in a way that would be oppressive to him or her. I do that in a way that opens me up for compassion, for being more compassionate and a loving spouse, right? So that's so if you are going to typecast, do it with grace, and I'll talk about that in the third hour. So I want you to have somebody in mind. I hope you've thought about somebody. So it could be a spouse. There's a middle photo. It could be a parent, that living or dead. Maybe this is an hour for you to kind of say, hey, mom and I, or dad and I butted heads, and I can never figure out why. Maybe this could be an area of seeing, hey, this is where he or she was coming from, and maybe this hour is about forgiving and seeing this is why we never were able to gel. Or this could be a colleague. This is probably what Mother Abby does with me in staff meetings. It's a 4 and a 7. So she's probably how she feels. And so just, have a colleague, and because that's some of the things around a table, that you have different numbers. And those can be some stressful moments. Those can actually be beautiful moments when you're pulling the gifts that each gives. And the way Cron describes this, and again, I hope you heard this in his reading, every type has got spiritual he'll call them superpowers. In the church, we would call them spiritual gifts. And to know what those gifts are that you have, and everyone has weaknesses or sins. Your favorite deadly sin is what he would talk about. And definitely Richard Rohr picks that up. So begin using that language, the true self, false self, as well. So now we're going to go into relationships, and I'm going to want you to be thinking about your number, your type, and that other person. Just kind of write their name down, and maybe if you know that type, put a guess. Maybe if it's 2 or 3, it's okay. If you get it wrong, just kind of put it there, and maybe you change that. Be thinking about that. I'm going to go through a little of what I learned I'm not going to go as deep as we did in 3 days, but I want to show you what we talked about in that 3-day retreat. I encourage you to do something like that and how the Enneagram might work with relationships. So you can jot some of this down as we move on. So we're going to begin. I'm not beginning like I began last time. I'm just doing type 1. I'm going to go 1 through, instead of going triads together, I'm just going to do 1. I start at 1. So type 1, relationship gifts and difficulty. So the left side are going to be their gifts in all of this. The right side is going to be the difficulties. And so type 1 is the reformer, the idealist, the need to, what does Crom say, the perfecter, the need to kind of perfect, or that's the person. And so they're reasonable. So in a relationship, these are some of their gifts. So these are relationship gifts. So I'm pulling from how they might, if you're 1, how you might function in a relationship. If you're in a relationship with 1, what you might experience. So the gifts, they're reasonable, they're fair, they're wise, they're responsible, they're balanced priority, they're orderly. I'm in a relationship with 1, so I can say all of that, and that's they're wonderful. They're the gifts, the challenge, or the challenges in the relationship is they can at times come across as critical, picky, emotionally constrained, negative, rigid, and judgmental. So those are the, so you can see reasonable, fair, wise, responsible, balanced priorities. These are some of the things they bring into it, but it can feel on some occasions that they're all those. Their core motivations is they want really kind of alignment. They want true good alignment with values. They're very balanced. They have integrity. Their basic fear, they have a fear of being bad, a fear of being corrupt, evil, and their wake-up call. So this is what I want you to write down if this is your number. And we'll have a wake-up call for everybody. The wake-up call, and one of the things we talked about in my relationship workshop was, when you start thinking this way, you might want to wake up because you're going down a bad kind of path. So the wake-up call for 1 would be this sense of personal obligation, that I've got to do this. This can only be done the right way. This can only be done my way. The wake-up call is this strong sense of personal obligation. Only I can do this. Only I can know this. You might be going down a wrong path in work relationships and in family relationships or somewhere else. Kind of step away and kind of rebalance and prioritize things. So that's a 1. 2, so type 2, the helper, caring, interpersonal. So some of their gifts in a relationship, obviously we've talked about this, they're nurturing in a relationship. They're attentive. You bring all that. You're generous. You're thoughtful. So if you're a 2 here, those are the gifts, and we love you for that. In a relationship, sometimes these can feel, I say this, these can feel, or maybe you're in a bad spot and you're acting in a bad way, but these can feel and be interpreted by other people as sometimes manipulative, intrusive, hovering, clingy, and possessive. So notice down on this chart again, and I'm using my number here, I'm a 4. So 4 when I'm stressed and things aren't good, and when I can be a bad 2. So sometimes a 4 in a relationship, I can be a bad 2. So I could have been, and this is when things are not going well, I can appear to be all the bad sides of a 2. Now I'm just dealing with a 2, but I want you to see how these arrows are working. So as a 4, and when I go back and think about my relationships, I can say in my worst days, I've been manipulative, intrusive, hovering, clingy, and possessive. So so I want you to be paying attention to your arrows in this as well. So the wake-up call for the essential quality for a 2 is they real love. I mean, they really do love, and they want to love, and they're nurturing. Their basic fear, here's their basic fear, as you've heard this before, of being loveless, or being without love. They love, but they need to be loved as well. And their wake-up call. So if you're a 2, your wake-up call is, am I running around just people pleasing all the time? Because if I'm people pleasing all the time, I'm not paying attention to who? The inside. So the wake-up call is, if all my energy is toward pleasing everybody else, Where am I really, what am I not paying attention to? 3, in relationships, they're charming, they're attractive, they're competent, they're efficient, they're confident, they're admirable, they're the role model. I mean, they're the achiever, right? However, 3 can feel at times, maybe when things aren't good, or if you're in a relationship with a 3, they can feel constantly active because they're trying to succeed. They're running around, they're not available to you, they're emotionally detached as a result, they're competitive, they're self-promoting, they're overworking, they're not there. Real value is the essential quality of a 3. They're always looking for, for the real value, for being success oriented. Their basic fear is being worthless, right? and deficient. And their wake up call. Here's your wake up call if you're a 3. Being overdriven, overperforming. When you're going on so much, when you're doing so much, when you're high functioning, what is being neglected? That's a wake up call. 4. Type 4. Again, the individualist, the romantic, depends on which model you're looking at. They're creative. These are the gifts. So if you're in a relationship with a 4, or you are a 4, you're bringing creativity into a relationship, sensitivity, self-awareness. You know your feelings. You live in your feelings. You're expressive. You're emotionally honest. You have a unique outlook for life. You're the creative, right? But being in a relationship with a 4 can often feel, I'm sure, for my spouse, that I can be moody. I can be withdrawn. I'm in here working on a sermon, darling. I'm up in my little cave. Do not leave me yet. I'm hypersensitive. I can be self-absorbed and pessimistic. So those can be the negatives, how we can feel in relationships. Again, the essential quality for a 4 is that unique identity. That's what we want, a real identity. This is who we are. Our basic fear, here's our basic fear, is that we have no identity or no personal significance, that God forbid, if I'm long gone, nobody really remembers my name anymore. And our wake-up call for 4, since we are creators and we love to create, our wake-up call is when we start to live in our fantasies and in our imaginations. We need to wake up, probably be aware of those around us and what's going on in the world around us. Get out of that imagination. 5s, the investigator, the intense cerebral person. Here they are. They're intelligent. They're unusual. They're open-minded. They're whimsical, self-contained, very objective, and very curious. These are great, right? I mean, in each one of these, and this is the other thing about them, each one of these are phenomenal gifts. Like you want to be attracted to any of those, all these good attributes for being in relationships with these folks. So here's a 5. But the challenge, definitely their challenges in relationships are withholding, emotionally and intellectually detached. Talked about this. At times they can be very cynical and scornful. For 5s, their essential quality, what they look for is real illumination and understanding. That's what drives them. That's what motivates them. Again, some of this Enneagram work is about discovering those motivations in people. Their basic fear of being overwhelmed, of being helpless, being useless. And the wake-up call for a 5 is retreating into the mind. So kind of, again, if you start retreating into the mind, if you're a 5 and you just want to go there and just stay here and barricade yourself in books, maybe I'm a 5, barricade yourself in the books and just avoid life. It can be a wake-up call. Get out of that moment. That's what I mean by the wake-up call. When you're going there, stop, look around, recalibrate. 6s, the loyalist. They're trustworthy. This is what they bring to relationships. They're trustworthy, they're responsible, they're loyal, they're supportive, they're dedicated, they're a team player. That's great qualities. All these are great qualities. But it can feel at times in a relationship with a 6, they can be doubtful. They can be very anxious. They can be indecisive, constantly seeking reassurance. And they can come across as complaining. So the essential quality of a 6 is they're the team player. They're really awake. They're responsible. They're truly awake. I mean, that's a gift. And their basic fear is of being lost without support, without guidance. And their wake-up call has to do with that fear. It's always looking for a sure thing. I want this. I want something secure. I'm always looking for secure. When you're focused on that, step back. Step back. Seven, the enthusiast, the busy, fun-loving enthusiast. They're happy in a relationship. They're fun. They are entertaining. They're spontaneous. They're passionate. They're full of energy and new ideas. I mean, these are great gifts and to have a 7 around there, to be in a relationship with a 7. That's good stuff. But they can come across as a little scattered, somewhat hyperactive to be with, dissatisfied because they're always looking for the next thing, right? They can appear to be over talkative in a relationship and sometimes insensitive. So the 7's essential quality is they have this real freedom. They're always longing for the next. They have a freedom to go on to the next thing. It's a true gift. Their basic fear is of deprivation, and you'll see this as a 7 for those of you who are 7. Fear of deprivation or being trapped in emotional pain. They're joyous because they don't want to look at the darkness. And the wake-up call for the 7, when you start moving to the next thing and the grass is always greener and the next big thing, the next big activity, when you start thinking that grass is greener over there, stop for a moment because you're going down a path. So that's your wake-up call. Stop for a moment, be around in a relationship, look and see what's going on. Maybe even see where the darkness is. The 8, going back to the 8. So the challenger. The challenger is a powerful, strong person, good provider, reliable, charismatic, big-hearted. So again, back to those arrows. As you're looking at these, how these arrows function, that's the beauty of an 8, right? They're really kind of a 2. They can be a 2. So that's a great gift in a relationship. They care for those. Now they can run you over. Got an 8 father-in-law. Oof, oof. He said he loved me. He also told me he'd kill me if I did anything crazy. So there you are. He can be dominating. Let's go to what it can feel like. Dominating, bossy, controlling, egocentric, too hard driving. So if you're in a relationship with an 8 or you work with an 8, you can feel those things, and that's sometimes how they can feel. So remember the strengths, and also kind of remember some of these feelings. So what the 8th, their essential quality is they truly do have that real strength. Their basic fear, and so where does that come from? So the basic fear is of being harmed. So you bite before, right? You get bit, right? You punch before you get punched. Being harmed, being controlled, or being violated. That's their basic fear. And their wake-up call. So their wake-up call, if you're an 8, is: are you using too much energy? Are you so focused on one thing? Is there a reason behind that? Is to kind of stop when you become so hard driving on one thing, that step back, see what's going on, assess it, bring it bring it before yourself. This is kind of back to that Rowan Williams thing. This is the wake up call for everybody. Bring that thing in front of you, look at it and say, why am I doing this? That's what is intended by this wake up call. And relationships. 9, finally, the peacemaker. They're easygoing, they are accepting, they are stable, they are loving, they're low maintenance, they're accommodating, they're relaxed. The downside, being in a relationship with a 9, they can feel stubborn, passive aggressive, withdrawn. They can feel non-communicative, sorry, big word. Their essential quality is real wholeness. I mean, they sit up at the 9, they sit up at the top of that. They're some of your some great politicians were 9s, because they can see it all from that little perch. Their basic fear of being disconnected, of fragmentation, of being cut off from everything. They're hard to make a move because they don't want to upset the apple cart. And their wake up call is when they just find themselves wanting to get along with others. Then they're probably missing what they really want, right? That's the 9. So the wake up call one, I'll just do whatever you all want. Tell us 9. Because sometimes your idea as a 9 is really, really, really insightful. We need that in the room. So those are some relationship dynamics. I'm watching time again. I'm talking too much. So I hope you were able to see kind of how you function, some of those gifts, how it might feel. And if you're in a relationship with somebody else, it's a number that you saw some things, maybe how some of the gifts that they bring, but also how they might be, how they might come across. And sometimes it's not intentional. It's just who they are and how they communicate. It's not often directed at you. That's when we get to our third hour of how we can use this stuff in our relationships will be very helpful for growth. Triads, again, we talked about the body, the heart, the head. There's some other, another psychologist used this with groups. There's a complaining group, the 6s, the 1s, and the 2s. There's an assertive group, the 8s, the 7s, and the 3s, and there's the withdrawn groups. Jane Hornell, I think was her name. So you can find out more about how these work in group dynamics. There's so much research out here. Then there are these harmonic groups, right? The positive group. I can read you a little about the positive groups. 7, 9, and 2 right there. The positive group, my song for them would be always look on the bright side of life. This is really what they do. And so if you're in a relationship with a 7, 2, or 9, always look on the bright. They can do that. This is who they are. The competency group, which would be 1, 3, and 5, as you can see. Those numbers in relationships, they strive to be objective, effective, competent. They can solve problems. And then the reactive group, 4, 6s, and 8s. We're emotionally attuned to things. Man, we can emotionally read the room and we can emotionally react. So we've got the strength there, but we also have the weakness because we can be so emotionally attuned that we can be vindictive. So each of those has got strengths and weaknesses in those groups. So again, I'm showing you different ways you can go deeper. We spent a lot of time in this 3-day workshop, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here talking about these basic instincts. That we have 3 instincts, and you'll see this on your page. I want you to spend some time in your group here in a minute looking at these instincts. So there's social, SO, sexual or one-on-one, SX, depending on where what paradigm you're working out of, and then self-preservation, SP. And so in your report on page 10, you saw kind of how you stack up on those. Yeah, so that would be a part of a real, so you can go a little deeper within your type. You can start looking at your instincts. So it just gets crazier, not crazier, but it just gets very intense. And so it's nice to balance these. You can see in that report what you're supposed to do. Self-preservation, physical needs, comfort, safety, health, resources, domesticity, practicality. We spent a lot of time in my workshop looking at these. Sexual, the one-on-one, they enjoy stimulation, they enjoy going deeper, competing, taking risks, seeking interjected resonances and attraction. Social adaptation, SO, bonds of connection, reading clues, affiliations, adaptation, reciprocity, awareness. So we looked at how these function within our own personality types. We also looked at how these function in relationships. So this is some of the stuff I'm putting this in here, how you use these in relationships. Yeah, so in my 3-day workshop, it went very depth in a lot of relationship stuff. So just get prepared if you sign up for that. It goes pretty deep on intimacy and love and all that good stuff. So just want to let you know. And so discover kind of which one's your strengths. So you can also look at how you behave, your centers of expression on page 12 in your report. So all these things, and my little things acting so weird. There it is. So I've talked again kind of long. I want to spend some time in some groups. So here's what I want you to look at. What is your number, and what ways does your number reveal how you function in relationships? So going back to this first part of this presentation, did you see something that spoke to you? I certainly did. As I showed you, I see some weaknesses in my 4, but I also saw how my 4 went to a really bad 2. Then how do you see your dominant instinct? So I'm basically going to get you to look in your report. How do you see this dominant instinct and center of expression impacting your relationship? So I'll show you a little what I mean by that. I'm a social. That's my dominant. I love getting along with the herd, with family, community, and groups. And as some of you know, I've changing jobs. I've commuted down to St. John's. I'm going to stay up here in Thomasville. You can see how dominant social can find the strain in living an hour away from a parish and not being totally in that community and involved in all aspects, but how kind of being in your own community, closer to your family, you can see all that, how that maybe impacts my instincts and some of my decisions. Maybe if I had another instinct, one-on-one SX, sexual or self-preservation, that I might think differently. So I'm just invite you to bring stuff like that into how you make decisions in your relationships. How can you see the Enneagram being a helpful tool in your personal and professional relationships? So again, I want you to have thought of that person. In my case, it's a spouse and a 1. So I'm often looking at a 1 and how I'm perceived by her and how she might be perceived by me. And we'll talk about that in the 3rd hour, what to do now that we've seen those distinctions. Now, what do we do with that information? So definitely very much visible. So those are your questions. Go into groups. Claire, what do you think? 15 minutes?
I think we can do that. Here, hold on a second. I'll pause.
Yes, guys, welcome back. We're going in some housekeeping. I know it's now just 11:10. We're going to some housekeeping stuff. First of all, my presentations have been recorded. So if you have trouble falling asleep at night, they'll be made available to you. You can get a link and listen to my voice until you pass out. And I'll do a PDF of the slides. Most definitely, I'm happy to do that. So the presentations have been recorded. None of the obviously discussions have been. So and again, this is a short section, the last section. I've thrown a lot of stuff your way. And just a reminder, this is an introduction. I am not an expert. I said that from the get-go. I do not know. I can't even answer some of Valerie's basic questions. So there's so much out there, and it's available to you. So I encourage you to go. What I hope to do is to kind of show you kind of the ways that you can get into this. This is a beautiful tool. I find it to be very, very helpful. And now I'm going to talk about how I've kind of used it, short amount, and kind of ways to use it. And again, to kind of go back when we're going to look at some wings and some look at the arrows and kind of how we can function with that. So this last section is now what? Good title. In my group, we did my last group on relationships and sharing this with others and maybe how to get others connected with the Enneagram. Ian Cron's got tremendous number of videos out there. This is one on Fuller. I'm not even sure. I think I've seen some of it. He's got the audio book on the road back to use. In a great way is Andy Stanley, who's a mega church pastor and the Buckhead Church. Remember Charles Stanley? If you're a Christian, you remember the guy with all the maps. This is his son Andy, who is always on TV. Andy's is a pastor at Buckhead Church. Andy Stanley had Ian Crom on a podcast. He has a leadership podcast with some basically with business leaders and kind of talking about faith and spirituality and business. And so he had Andy Stanley on, Andy Stanley had Ian Cron on, and they did 4 talks. So 2 were on an introduction, and then the other 2 were on kind of decision making and work and leadership. So I recommend those. And again, if you're trying to we spent some time in my group last time talking about adult children and maybe how to get them, or younger children, how to get them interested in something like this, particularly if you want to know their numbers and their types. Those are some great ways. Those podcasts are really good ways to get people motivated. Sorry. Moving on. So going forward, this is what we're doing today. So we're looking at wings and arrows. I want to spend some last time here just making sure we're clear on what that means when we talk about our wings and arrows. I want to look at the kind of the self-awareness aspect and how you integrate. You'll see some arrows of integration, whether you're fully integrated or not. My workshop, they told me we were all pretty much average, although my score was pretty low. Now, maybe I accidentally deleted my IEQ 9 and I had to take it again. But I'd taken it a couple of years, about a year and a half ago. So, and maybe it's because I'm about to change jobs. So maybe my stress was pretty good, and it didn't tell me I was fully integrated by any means. I got a lot of work to do. And so in the last section I want to talk about is personal and spiritual growth. Again, I'm a newbie to this. And so I want to show you kind of how I've started using this in my life. So let's go back and look at this again. Whatever your type is, and I'm going to use me because I'm a 4 and I can speak there a little easier, and I don't want to say something wrong and have you use your number and maybe say something I shouldn't say. So I'll say something as a 4. So I'm a 4. So you locate me down here, and since it's always about me as a 4, it's easy to use me as a 4. And so notice my wings right there. There's the wings are a 5 and a 3. So, and if you look in your report, you'll see those numbers. So I'm a 4 and I see a 5 and a 3 wing, and it'll tell me kind of the best of those and kind of how I maybe pull from those wings. And I naturally associate as a 3, probably a little more than a 5. But at one point in my group, I talked about going to seminary. 3 years of Yale Divinity put me in a 5 quadrant. I was a 4, but I definitely I took on some 5. I can get into 5. And one of the things Ian Cron talks about is, and I really love this part of his book, is part of growth for Wallace as a 4 is learning to be a little more of a 3 and learning to be a little more of a 5, right? I mean, is being okay bumping into those quadrants and pulling from those. You can see that 5 actually takes me into a whole nother triad. So there's a lot of growth that can occur when I read about a 5 and I take on some of those attributes. I naturally see the world, my natural lens, my glasses, and your glasses, or whatever those numbers are in front of you. But there's a lot of growth for Wallace as a 4 when I go into 5 and I go into 3. Okay, those are the wings. And that's what some of the things Crom talks about and some of the things he raises in these reports. But the natural, so now the arrows. So the arrows are for me. I have an arrow. Can you see my cursor here? I have an arrow that takes me to 1 and an arrow that takes me to 2. And as you go back and see those slides and you look at this on the Enneagram Institute on that website, all free, that my arrow of stress, when I'm not, so when I go back there and my integration is low and all that kind of last stuff in your scores, you can see kind of where there's stresses. If there's a lot of stresses in life, I'm probably not functioning like a good 4, right? So those, I left those string things off of your report because those take a snapshot of where you are right now. Yeah, changing jobs, changing a bunch of stuff. I had some high strain. and so I'm sorry, guys. Now everybody and their brother thinks it's Saturday, and I don't work on Saturday. So stressful, I can go to a 2. I can be a bad part of a 2. So remember, that was that worst area. It can be a bad part of a 2. And when things are healthy, when I'm really functioning very well, my arrow takes me to a 1. And I can be really good. I can pull those positive attributes of a 1. So as a creative 4 person, I'm up here maybe doing sermons, doing some other writings. I can get really, really immersed in myself. When I'm really being high functioning and healthy, I can be a 1. And so I need to look at pulling that 1. Sometimes I read 1 stuff as a 4 just to be a better just to kind of try to make that arrow connect for growth, for personal growth. So I try to do that. So yeah, so as you look through this stuff, I try to self-awareness and integration, try to invest in activities and practices that keep balance in your life. And then try to affirm. This is another thing about the Enneagram that I've really learned is I see this personally for me, and maybe for you, you're only looking at the negative things today and all the stingers. And so as you've talked today, as maybe you've read this report, please don't just, because this is kind of our human nature. Maybe I'm speaking as a four here, always looking at the negative. There are so many positive things, and this I think this assessment and this tool helps you see your gifts, your fruits of the spirit, and to kind of make decisions that emphasize those, where you're going to succeed. So make sure you affirm the positive things about yourself. Make sure you see that. Make sure you're aware of that, and don't just go tunnel vision to the negative, because that was when I first got exposed to this. That's what I did. How can I fix Wallace? Can't fix me, but how can I fix me? Look at those gifts and what you can bring to something. So please, 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 as you're doing some work with this on self-awareness and integration, celebrate those things. But also back to the negative, since we want to go there, be aware of what happens when things go stress. So I think knowing that my two, that stress wing is there. I read up on that. So when things get bad, like the stress stuff, and I start becoming a two, I can stop it. That was that wake up call that we did on some relationship stuff. So know those things, kind of keep going back through and do that. And then use those wings and arrows to grow. I really do love reading more about 5s and 3s and kind of what I can do to grow there. So if you're a 2, look at 1, look at 3. If you're a 9, look at 8, look at 1, and be aware of those areas of growth. So Cron will say, you've gotten your number today. I've gotten my 4, but I'm really more than one number. I'm a 4, I'm a 5, I'm a 3. I've got a cross of a 1 and a 2. And so I touch kind of in some aspects, and as life changes, there's fluidity in this. Okay. And I've tried to say that from the beginning, there's fluidity in this, but the natural lens is that 4 right there. I resonate there a little more than any other spot. So again, this last section on personal growth, I want to say that friends, families, and colleagues are all, just kind of remember this, they're all different numbers, right? I'm married to a different number. I work with people that are different numbers, and so much personal growth has been grace. I've got some colleagues on this phone call. I've got people I interact with on different sort of groups on this call, and I know their numbers, and not everything. If Claire comes, she never comes barreling in my office because she's not. But if somebody comes barreling, I have a 7 colleague that comes barreling. That's just who that person is, and that's okay. And I can see that, I can see that as annoying at sometimes, but that's that love, that's that joy, and I celebrate that. And even it's not intrusive. It truly is a joy. And so I use these numbers and these types to really see other people in the moments that maybe it takes me a little, in the moments where I can see the negative in them, or I can choose to see the positive, and I try to see the positive. So I want you to do that. That as a takeaway today of seeing what your adult children are. Enneagram folks are very, very hesitant if you have young children to kind of type them. And so I would encourage you not to do that if you have young children. But if you've got grown children, celebrate those strengths, identify who they are, and see where there are ways to kind of really grow in those relationships, how you can use this as a tool to go deeper, because that's really what this is about. I've used it for, again, grace. Grace is the word I want to use. This is grace for myself, that unconditional love, grace and compassion for different numbers, knowing that they see the world differently, and to offer forgiveness, because if somebody's doing something, you can, if they're a different number, they're a different type, I can become very judgmental, and to see that I've got a good colleague who's an 8, and so I always see that too in her, and I love that, because she that's where she comes from. And so sometimes I'll just say Mandy when Mandy's asking me to go a little deeper, it can be, whoa, Mandy, what are you doing? But she's so, if you know Mandy, she's just wonderful. And there's that too. I'm not sure she's an 8, but I think she's an 8. But that's, and I can, she's trying to press me on something. I give that compassion and give that forgiveness, and know that Mandy really has a big heart and wants what's best for St. John's. And you can see that on our website. And so that's how I use this in my own kind of growth. And Mandy's not attacking me. She's trying to make me better. She's trying to make St. John's better. And so also the need for diversity, where I have used this in my own life is making sure a lot of numbers are around the table. As I mentioned, what Ian Crom did in some podcasts, and where he's using this with companies is I love 4s. It's great to have a bunch of 4s together because we're creative, we're expressive, and 3s and 2s. But we need to be very intentional. Part of diversity and inclusion, we look at diversity and inclusion in a lot of ways today, but let's look at this in kind of spiritual gifts. We need to have all these gifts around the table, particularly in our church. How can we make sure we have different perspectives? You can see how this glorifies God and makes us better and stronger in a lot of ways as a community. So having the need for that diversity. Last sort of thing I want to do here before I go into spiritual section and put you back into groups is the profile type. You're not supposed to type people, but I just said, I've asked you to do that. And again, just remember to do this with grace. It's bad when I take Margaret Ann, who's a 1, my wife, and say, and use that as a rigid sort of thing. Oh, you're just a 1. You would say that. If you do that, you deserve to get slapped. But if I see it with grace and know that maybe she's coming from a different area and that is a spouse, or how can I see her as a 1 and help her maybe when things get tough? And she does the same for me as a 4. I mean, we talk about this. This is what I do. This is how I need you to help. And so to begin to share a little about who you are with a spouse or a family member, this can be a very, very powerful tool, and it's got to be used for compassion and grace. If you're going to pigeonhole somebody in on this is not what we're called to do with it. Again, a great spiritual read here is Richard Rohr. You want to go deeper with this in a Christian perspective, I encourage you to go here. I heard you all talking when I walked up the stairs about Jesus in the Enneagram. There are many that say he could be a 2. But Rohr kind of mentions this. He's a little of everything, right? And this is a great way for Christians. You can kind of see the different aspects of Jesus. His teaching is a 1, his patience, his care is a 2, his ambition and energy is a 3, creativity is a 4, his distance, sometimes he's always up on that mountain by himself, right? Detached is a 5. He's got that trust and obedience is a 6, is a 7. He's full of joy. I mean, how much water did turn to wine, right? And 8, he can confront, and 9, he's got the composure. So is somebody who is fully human. He represents the entirety of that Enneagram, right? So I want to end this kind of section of this talking about how I've used this as a 4 for spiritual growth. Again, I'm new to this, and so I want you to look at there's more to do at the end of this workshop. How do you use this? How do you use your type and your number to grow spiritually? And so as a 4, I'll just share this with you. I know that emotions for a 4 are big, right? Emotions are big, and my arrow of growth is a what? Is a 1. And so for me, I sat down with this, and I've had prayer practices that have been successful and practices that have failed, just like everybody else in here. I struggle with my own faith life. I know I'm a 4, so I can tell you this. And so I struggle, right? And so how I've used this to kind of create some spiritual practices in my life is I know that a 4 likes emotions. Guess what? Ignatius of Loyola, part of the Daily Examen, he was a big spiritual writer in the 1500s. He talked about going into your emotions. So at the end of the day, I do the Daily Examen. I walk, and I've simplified it. I give thanks, because that's something a 4 needs to do, is give thanks. I look for a place where there's joy to celebrate that, where Christ was. I also look for a place of pain, probably emotion I've been holding and I've been dwelling in all day long. I offer that to God and ask God to come into it. So I'm using my emotions as a 4 to kind of interact with with God, have a relationship with God. I'm also a 1, so I need that rigidity and I need that structure. So the mornings, because that's what I need, or I'll just live in the emotion. So my mornings, I go to morning prayer. And I'm also, if I'll read this, I'm an active person. So I need something where I can pray actively. So I downloaded an app that I can listen to morning prayer while I walk the dogs. And so I go through, so I've tried to use this to integrate, to see who I am in this report, and really craft a spirituality for me that works for me. And I encourage you to do that, to begin looking at how that might work for you. There's tons of resources on spiritual practices and Enneagram sites. So I'm not going to walk through all that. But here's some great, again, these are the books I think you should come into: The Wisdom of the Enneagram, Richard Rohr. And this is, the task today has just been exposure and how to go a little deeper, and ways in which to use it. So what I want you to do in the last maybe 15 minutes, let's do 15 minutes, Claire, if that's okay, is to look at these, to spend some time in here, maybe with your group, look at some of these developmental exercises. Okay, they're next to your number, and maybe just highlight one or talk about one with your group that maybe spoke to you. So I want you to read those. This is why you pay the money for this report. It's not just self-knowledge, it's growth. So begin highlighting 1 or 2 of those, and maybe share that with the group. Like, hey, this is the one I'm going to work on. The other thing I want you to do is talk about what you're going to take away. If there's anything you're going to take away, or maybe you never want to do this again, what you're going to take away from this workshop. And then thirdly, how you might use this Enneagram to develop spiritual practices. I've shared how I do it. What ways might you begin to look at your own spiritual practices with this? Okay, let's come back in 15 minutes, Claire. Is that good?
Sorry, my computer decided to be annoying.